right. Ready for this?
Ready.
Let's do it.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. Every week that we record, Jim's belongings encroach further and further onto my side of the table, and I'm tired of it. And so, in 2019, I pledged to build a wall separating Jim's side of the table from mine, and Jacob is going to pay for it. To further demonstrate my resolve, I'm willing to shut down this podcast until I get what I want. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Jacob, don't stand for that.
I knew it was going to come to this.
I knew it was going to end up having to build a partition between these guys.
Technically, because of the deal that we got recording at the studio, the discount, he's already paying for it. So
Essentially, he's already subsidized
right.
the Lego wall that we'll build.
Yeah. Right.
So that you still get to, as long as you get your story, as long as you get to say it, that you did it. You'll scale it down to a fence, and then you'll scale it down to just somebody looking.
I just came in one day and you were just building a Lego wall across the table. Oh, it would just make me so happy.
What started out as a joke became
God, they're
real.
really serious about this. Hey, can we store this somewhere? Screw everything else up. I really want to put this wall up. Well, thank you for that, Nick. I think that we should build a wall. I think that it's time. And my stuff. I keep all my stuff on my lap. But you are right. It's the side of my lap that really belongs to you. So
Exactly.
That's my knee.
Yeah. Well, you got to stop it while it's still manageable. You don't want things to get out of control.
That's right. So we are broadcasting right before we go schlep stuff up and down stairs. Today's moving day.
Today's moving day.
I'm excited for it.
Did you ever watch Reno 911?
Yes.
I think of that show every time I move.
Okay.
I don't
remember
moving
that.
day. Okay, because it was the sheriff. Right? He was moving, and the only guy that he could get to help him out was the other guy that. So the sheriff was kind of. I don't know if he was bi or gay.
Yeah, the guy with the shorts.
Yeah, but he liked the other guy, the African American guy.
Okay.
And he was the only one that showed up to help him move. And so the whole day, he's like, moving day, and he's taking selfies and doing all this stuff.
Overly.
He's making margaritas, and he's doing all this stuff. And so he was living in a trailer. And then they load up the truck.
Oh, my God.
They get in. They drive 2 trailers down, and he's like, okay, we're here.
Oh, my God. But he recruited him anyway.
And then the guy, he lost his shit. He was angry, and he was yelling. He's like, are you kidding me? You drugged me all the way out here so you can move. And
yeah, they just wanted company.
Oh, it was such a good episode.
So I hope that moving day lives up to what you just said. I hope we're having margaritas.
What I just heard is you're getting margaritas.
That's what I heard. I heard a verbal commitment.
Yeah.
I heard that I'm going to be seduced, and there's going to be margaritas. So...
Not necessarily in that order.
Damn well, but it's right. Just damn well better happen.
It wasn't part of it. Although, if we do drink all the alcohol that I have at my house, that's less
stuff to move. That's moving smart. Okay.
Right.
I think you're onto something.
Work smart, not hard.
That's right. I think that's exactly how we fix this problem.
So we leave here to go over to the U-Haul place to pick up the truck.
Nice.
And drive over.
And do the thing.
And we're going to start loading stuff up.
Are we just leaving your car at the U-Haul place?
No.
Or here?
I'll be honest, I hadn't thought of that.
So if you want, we can jump in my car. We'll drive down the U-Haul place. You get the U-Haul. I'll follow you back to your house, and we just leave your car here at the studio.
We could.
That's smart, too. Or you can leave it at U-Haul. I've done that. But I'm glad that we're talking about this during the podcast, because this is exactly the kind of thing people needed to know.
Yeah. I mean, we have some stuff to read, but we don't have to read.
No, let's skip the questions.
Skip the mail.
How do you feel about taking it to the U-Haul place?
Dude, moving day is a psychological experience. It is for me. It's a big deal.
And it's really funny, too, because I'm going through everything. I'm trying to pack everything away, and I'm finding stuff that I hadn't touched in a long time. And so now I kind of sit and I remember this.
It's like when you're a kid cleaning your room, right? Whenever your parents are like, hey, pick out all the stuff you don't play with anymore. We're sending it out. We're giving it away. And then you sit down and you cherish every Batman. You're like, no, you know what? This one... We have some memories.
But
Not ready to let go.
I do hope to set a new record, a new personal accomplishment, which I
Okay.
think is an accomplishment for the entire world.
Sure.
I hope to be the first person to successfully disassemble, move, and reassemble IKEA furniture twice.
Whoa.
Twice.
Why would you do that?
I've already done it once.
How heavy is it? We should just try to carry it. Nobody should ever.
No, this is like... No, it's like my bed was from IKEA.
God, why
and
would
then
you
my,
do that?
My desk in my office was from IKEA.
No.
But yeah, I've
Your desk is
disassembled
too
it
big.
and I can reassemble it.
Oh my God.
I'm really excited
I wouldn't
about
wish
that.
that on my worst enemy.
Yeah, most people
I had
just
an
throw it
IKEA
away.
desk that I bought in California, lived with me in California, and made like 5 or 6 different moves.
Oh.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
burn
Oh,
it.
So 2 is not
No.
the record.
How much is a new one?
I don't know.
I guess it don't matter. You're going to rebuild that one anyway.
At some point, that desk became the table in the old churn.
Oh, wow.
That was the old churn table.
Oh.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Dude, IKEA is amazing, though. Like, I get it. I get it. Like, but Allen wrenches. Just sitting there twisting all day long, man, putting back together. Well, I'm excited for moving day, Nick. So
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
it'll be fun.
And hopefully we are mostly sober throughout it. And I think it'll be good enough.
Yeah, we'll see.
And don't forget our barter. You have to ship me Laura for my commercial. That's the deal. So I ain't doing
Deal.
this for free.
Deal.
Yep.
So our first question, I'm really excited about this one because I've been listening to, going back and listening to a lot of old car talks.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like this one is the car talk equivalent of Stump the Chumps.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how they used to play that game?
Ooh, Stump the Chumps. That was a good game.
This one's a good one.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's dive into it.
Take it away.
All right, so this one's titled Sensory Processing Disorder. My therapist and I believe I am afflicted with a condition that makes me extremely sensitive to external stimuli. I've heard this condition referred to as HSP, Highly Sensitive Person, or SPD, Sensory Processing Disorder, and it's beginning to be recognized as something separate from anything on the autistic spectrum. Simple things are often debilitating, or at best irritable. Loud places are utterly painful. Daylight or a well-lit room is strenuous. If a place is roughly above 70 degrees, my energy gets zapped. Proximity to others is also fickle, so crowded places are rough. The easiest way I've found to describe it is comparing it to the effect of a hearing aid for all of your senses. When my grandfather complains about his hearing aid, he says it's painful and frustrating because it doesn't have directional focus. It just makes everything louder. That's essentially what I experience. The daylight is brighter, noises are louder, heat is hotter. One schnozberry tastes like 1,000 schnozberries. Great reference. The result of dealing with these symptoms, which persist 24 hours a day, is exhausting. An extraordinary amount of decompression time is needed, sometimes days, in order to reset. It has affected my entire life and my ability to get a restful sleep. And if more than one stimuli is occurring at once, my mind and body tend to just shut down. For instance, if I'm at a crowded bar, in order to survive, I often have to close my eyes to shut off one stimuli in order to even hear the person next to me. But even responding in an intelligible way is virtually impossible. The issue that I would like some advice on is that I'm currently in a place where I want to make new friends and meet women. However, when I'm experiencing these things, which tend to occur during most social activities, people often perceive me as shut off, disinterested, cold, aloof, when the opposite couldn't be more true. I simply just cannot function. I've tried stepping outside to cool down and reset, use earplugs, sunglasses, sticking to the corners, and openly mentioning what's affecting me whenever the chance arises, though it rarely does anything unless a more intimate scenario arises. What would you suggest to help cope with these physically painful situations and to help remain conscious about hearing more what would you suggest to help cope with these physically painful situations and to help remain conscious about appearing more open despite experiencing a cacophony of overstimulation? Love the show and congrats on your growing success. With you always, Anonymous.
So, did we get stumped?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can't say that I've heard these phrases before, like sensory processing disorder, highly sensitive person.
So,
You don't know what cacophony means, do you?
I was lost.
That's why I had him read it.
Yeah.
Cacophony?
Keiko Papa. So yeah, I don't know. I mean,
so
what was your take on it?
I've heard of sensory processing disorder.
Okay.
And essentially, it is kind of in the realm a little bit of the autism spectrum disorder in the sense that I think this kind of goes back to our example that we talked about before, the difference between hardware and software.
Yeah.
And it actually kind of reminds me of, what was it, the Man of Steel? The Superman one? Yeah.
Oh.
Remember when he starts to experience all of these sensory awareness that he has as a kid?
The reboot of Superman.
Yeah, and he can't shut it off.
Yeah.
And everything is just so intense.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's right. Overstimulation.
Yeah.
So when I read this for the first time, the closest thing I could equate it to from things I've seen is with toddlers. And so, like, toddlers basically get overstimulated. Their brain reaches, like, a max where it just has had too much content and it can't continue. And that's why they nap. And they nap to kind of reboot. And then when they come back, like, they're calm and they're quiet and they're not angry anymore. And they can kind of take on the second half of the day. And so it's interesting because when I hear this in an adult, he talks about decompression time. That he kind of needs to pull away for a while, or he or she talks about needing to pull away for a while and just kind of regroup and have quiet time. And it can take a couple of days. That kind of struck me, multiple days. I would imagine what that's meant, what the person would probably describe that as is like a couple of days before they feel like being social again. But probably not in the sense of like they need to reboot for 2 days of quiet sleep. And, I don't suspect that's what they mean. Right. But no, I think that makes sense. I mean, the question then on the table is not so much how do I fix this, because I think that the author understands that we don't necessarily have a gizmo or a gadget that we can twist to make that stop, but more so how do I how do I try to exist out in the real world?
Right. Yeah. How do you get your life in order? How do you meet new people? How do you date? Mm-hmm. I mean, that is very difficult. And I don't have this condition. But even for me, going into crowded restaurants or crowded places, it's very stressful for me. I don't like big crowds, and it is difficult sometimes to focus. Like I notice my eyes kind of start bouncing around the room and looking at all these different things.
Yeah.
And if people don't understand that, then it can give that appearance of being just that you don't care,
right?
Or
and
not interested.
What I think is also special about this is when I think about a person, if they came into the office and they said, "Guys, the deal is that I'm really uncomfortable and almost anxious in these environments," and so we would immediately start targeting like cognition. But this isn't cognition. It's not the way they're thinking about it or what it means to them or their perception. It is literally a physically painful experience.
Right.
Light hurts me.
Kind of like going back to our example again of this being a hardware issue and not really a software, whereas we are kind of the software engineers.
Yeah.
I think the best that you can do in a situation like this is you're just going to have to experiment and find what's going to work best for
your body.
you. Yeah, you kind of have to understand what your limits are, what are the things that you can and cannot do. And find some sort of technique that isn't going to change the system. It's not going to change the hardware of what we're doing.
Right.
But it's a way that you adapt to the hardware that you've got.
I agree with that. I don't know of any medicine that I've heard of. I mean, I would, in this kind of thing to the writer, I would definitely recommend a psychiatrist consult, right? Because we are talking about hardware. And anytime we're talking about hardware, I want you to either see a psychiatrist or I want you to go see, a neurologist. And in this case, actually a neurologist is probably the one I probably want you to see. They could probably speak to the condition. If they're aware of this before, they may have some actual fixes, whether that's medication or whether it's a list of things that they recommend that you do because they know the hardware a lot better. So a neurologist in this case would be the kind of professional you probably want to see. I think that Nick's right. Learning your body, coping with it the same way you would if you had an allergy or if you had a disability of some kind. It's a physical limitation. And so I think that that's kind of like the best way. And clearly the person's doing that. I mean, they're surviving. They're finding ways to get through it. Communicating to others, I kind of like that. I'm very comfortable with that. Letting people know, oh, I'm just a little overstimulated right now. If you see me wincing, it has nothing to do with you or the conversation. It's just I'm a little light sensitive and sound sensitive right now, and so that's all. So I don't know. I mean, it sounds like they've even experimented with things like earplugs, or trying different ways to kind of dull it out, or sunglasses. So gosh, it's a really tricky one.
I think my best advice would be, and I'm not sure to the writer, I'm not sure where you live, but I would try to find a group of other people, maybe an online community of other individuals who have this.
Yeah.
Because I think that's probably going to be your best resource, to be able to find other people currently living with it and to just be able to pick their brain. Like, how do you deal with this certain situation? How do you deal with dating? How do you deal with going out and socializing?
Yeah.
I think you're going to get a lot better techniques and tips from people in that community.
Yeah.
I'm a big person. I really believe in
You're
fighting.
Huge.
No. Let me finish that.
Oh, sorry. I think I misunderstood. Anyway, I'm a big person.
I'm a big believer.
Got it.
A big believer or a big advocate for support groups.
Support group, yeah.
Yeah, finding other people who are currently living in the same situation. They're going to have the best advice for that. In regard to dating, that's tricky. I think the nice thing is that in today's world of online dating, where you're not necessarily having to go certain places to meet people, in the online world, you've got a little bit more control of how you meet people and what you do for that first date.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Going someplace maybe a little quieter, maybe
you can select
coffee shop or
right.
something like that.
You don't have to hang at a bar.
Exactly.
You can kind of schedule it and make a plan.
Yeah.
No, I think that this is one of those things that I think the adaption strategy is similar to a physical disability or some kind of like long-term thing in your life, right? Where like if you're an individual who utilizes a wheelchair for mobility, then yeah, it does factor into the way you think about environments and the way you think about places that you're going to feel comfortable and be able to kind of experience it like everybody else. And so I think that that's a similar kind of mindset, is sort of getting ahead of it. It requires a bit of planning. It requires understanding on the part of others. And that's one of the things I think that's interesting about mental and invisible things that's different than anything else, is that we kind of have to be the one who tells the other person. You don't get a license plate that says, that you have something. And that way when the cop pulls up, they know, hey, this guy, has an anxiety disorder. I need to think about how I'm going to talk. No, like you don't get anything like that. So you have to kind of communicate that to others. And I'm comfortable with you doing that. And one of the things I think this actually launches into a really good point generally is this question of how much should we share with other people and like when do we? And I think it comes back to your comfort, right? I mean, you and I, we value confidentiality because that's part of our ethics. But I also think you're empowered by telling your truth in places in which it is safe, rather than letting people wonder what's going on. I think it's okay to share that.
Right. I would agree.
Yeah.
I was able to find this place called the Star Institute for Sensory Processing Disorder.
Oh, wow.
spdstar.org.
Okay.
That may be useful for you as just kind of some resources.
Yeah.
And I would probably start there and see if you can find maybe dig around, see if you can find a support group or find any kind of online community or something that might be useful for you.
That's really good advice. And so, I think the big takeaways, maybe consider visiting with a neurologist to really get an official opinion on this, maybe a treatment plan, support group, that website. What was that website called again, Nick?
spdstar.org.
I love it.
It's
so
the
that's
Star
great.
Institute for Sensory Processing Disorder.
Yeah, but great question, and good luck with that. And, continue to adapt. Give yourself permission to experience the world differently and adapt to it. I think that's very fair.
Yes.
And, don't allow any shame or any guilt with that. Just kind of continue to adapt. But really good question. Thank you so much for writing in.
You have you've stumped the chumps.
You've stumped well.
So you win a T-shirt.
That makes how many episodes in a row?
Whenever we get any kind of swag, we'll send you something.
Yeah. Caveat may or may not include swag.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss a spouse returning from deployment. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Grae Whittaker. Mr. Whittaker is the chairman of the board with a pledge of 2666 and was the 12th president of the United States, serving from March 1849 until his death in July of 1850.
Thank you for your service.
Grae Whittaker previously was a career officer in the United States Army, rose to the rank of Major General, and became a national hero as the result of his victories in the Mexican-American War. As a result, he won election to the White House despite his vague political beliefs. His top priority as president was preserving the Union, but he died 6 months into his term before making any progress on the status of slavery, which had been inflaming tensions in Congress. If you'd like to help make the show possible, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy. We're back. Tip a canoe, and what was that slogan? Tip a canoe and something too.
It was vice president. Tip a canoe and
Taylor too.
Taylor too.
That's it. Yeah. So Grae Whittaker is also Zachary Taylor. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about a spouse returning from deployment.
Dear Nick and Jim, my husband will soon be returning home after a year-long deployment. I know from past experiences that this transition can actually be rough. I've heard some hilarious stories from other military spouses, so I know we're not the only ones who go through this. At least some of the conflict seems to come from different expectations. I'm so glad I'm home, now I can take it easy, versus I'm so glad you're home, now you can help out with all the shit I've been dealing with while you were gone. Do you have any suggestions for easing the transition? Ulrich.
Oh, man. So that I loved reading this because my first thought was, oh my God, that is exactly how I would think. Like if I were coming home, the first one, if I was coming home from deployment, I'm on vacation now. I go to work in a hard, scary thing,
right?
And I'm always working,
right?
And now I'm home and I'm on vacation. I'm on a break. It's time for me to be served rather than me to serve. And I would have that mentality. Even if nobody would really live that out, like they would, get on with the day-to-day and go pick up groceries and do all sorts of other things. I totally understand where a military person, male or female, coming home from deployment might have that kind of attitude, and I can entirely understand where the spouse or the family is saying, hey, I've been sacrificing too. You are not the only one that serves our country. I also do. By living my life without you and holding up the everything that needs to be held up for us. And now you're home and I'm excited for my relief. My reinforcement has arrived. I've been waiting for this. My life's supposed to get a touch easier too. That's a profound little situation where you're both right. And you both are going to have to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where for survival, each of them have to adjust.
Yeah.
So roles dramatically change. So
right.
I looked into this a while back because I've had clients who had a spouse that was returning, and we kind of had to deal with some of this. And as I was looking into this and reading and becoming more educated about it, it was kind of shocking to me and kind of surprising that a lot of this is pretty similar to what I've experienced as an addictions counselor when folks return home from treatment.
Right.
Now, they're not gone as long, but there's, in a sense, the roles dramatically change, right? And what people are responsible for, because mentally and emotionally, this person has been absent from the family for a long time.
Right.
They weren't physically gone.
Right.
But they have been gone for a while. So when you reacclimate into that environment, it can be very stressful.
Yeah.
The example I always like to use is it's kind of like if you've ever taken a slice of cherry pie out and then you change your mind like, oh, I don't want this. There's no putting that pie back in there.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because once you've taken that slice out, the rest of the filling kind of creeps out and starts filling in the empty
void.
space.
Right.
And that's what happens a lot with families. So you take that one slice out, so somebody's got that can't
just
family
continue.
Can't survive like that as it is. So roles adjust, people change. People start filling in all the stuff. And so now we're trying to put this back in.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult. So the advice that I've always given people is start with that expectation.
Right.
That this is going to be complicated.
Yeah.
And allow yourself that freedom to be able to get frustrated at times.
Right.
Where you're going to be stepping on each other's toes. Expectations are going to be different. But I think the big key to all of this is effective communication. As long as you're both communicating about it, I think that's going to be very important. And Ulrich, I don't know if you have kids, but that's like a whole nother dimension here too.
Yeah, right.
When we talk about parenting, and maybe parenting roles have changed or rules within the house have changed.
Right, because you're used to one regime, and now we're changing over. No, this is actually a really great question, and it's great in so many different ways. Not only just the practical side of, honestly, two perspectives of what it means that I'm home. And this comes back to cognitive behavioral therapy. What is the meaning of this? Right. What is the meaning of me returning? I'm no longer overseas. We're safer now. We can rejoin. And there's also something that you talked about, which is that learning curve of how we adapt in the absence of somebody, and then how we adapt now that they're back. Yeah. And so there is kind of this reacclimation phase for both people, for the family, for everything in the ecosystem. But, to that question of how can we kind of help this transition? The first and most important thing, coming from like a couple's perspective, I want you talking about it. Yeah. I do not like that we're not inspecting feelings, that we're just trying to, give each other directives or tell each other what we're going to do, and then expecting the other person to interpret what we really meant by that, or how we probably feel by what we said, or how what they said affects us. You guys have been apart for a long time. And so I need you to appreciate that you're at a disadvantage. And so you guys need to be very intentional with the way that you're communicating, making sure that each of you is representing your feelings in a very clear way. And that's something that, honestly, I want you to start rehearsing and practicing now, even if you're waiting for them to get back from deployment, in the phone calls, in the emails, that you're starting to share your feelings about this. Because I think if you can lead with a feeling, I feel this when you that, it really teaches the other person more about your truth. And it also steals away from this conversation things like accusation or things like misinterpretation. It starts with understanding. Right. And so that's something I want you to start putting into implementation right now, is communicating with feelings first and getting that truth in front of you. I think that will really grease the transition process and make it a lot more digestible for both of you. I think that would be better.
And I think you're going to have to plan some of this out as far as, one thing that I hear a lot about is the importance of date nights and having those times where you've got time. Yeah, where it's just the two of you, and it doesn't have to be even leaving the house. You know, it's just the two of you where you have that time where you can kind of talk, decompress, and get to know each other again. Yes. Because you have both gone through incredibly stressful situations and likely have had to change as a result of what you're going through. Yes. So you're going to have to kind of reintroduce yourself, plan for awkwardness. Yes. There's going to be some awkwardness, and that's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. So be able to have that time to talk about it and kind of get to know each other. Yeah. Because I've seen this before with a lot of families where someone returns home from deployment, and it's almost kind of like they're on a rock and roll tour. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, we got to be to grandma's at 2:00 today. And got to see everybody. We got to leave at this time so we can travel across the state to go see these people because you're home. So this is great and wonderful.
We're getting it all done.
Yeah. Yeah. And that could be really stressful. So, just being able to communicate, all of that stuff out, be able to take time for yourselves.
Another thing I want to mention on this, because we're right now we're focusing so much on the relationship aspect, which is, of course, is the question, which is why we should. But I want to appreciate for a moment, for all the listeners, what it is like for somebody coming back from deployment. For our military service members, when they come home, whether they were engaged in battle or whether they're put in danger, no matter what, they are leaving a very finely tuned culture and lifestyle. It's not just a job. It was not just another place. It's another version of them. It's an identity they had to forge through a long time and a lot of work in order to survive and function. And now we are just going to pluck that human who's fully developed for that context, and now we're just going to drop them in this other context for which they are not currently designed. Right. And that is a fish out of water experience that has an effect on everybody.
Yeah, and then you compound that with the fact that they've been traveling. Right? Yeah, so they're coming back. Of this. When I go overseas and I come back, I didn't go to war.
Right.
But when I come back, I'm drained.
Yeah.
So the fact that now we're adding that extra military
All of
component behind it, that's going to be incredibly stressful.
And that actually could be some of the calculus here too, Ulrich, is maybe even giving them permission to have kind of a decompression zone. But for you two to negotiate that and to say, listen, for the first 2 weeks after you get here, I'm really just going to let you be a passenger and just kind of see how our home and how our family functions in the real world, right? So I'm not going to plan on changing yet. I'm going to give you 2 weeks to ease into this, and that also gives me 2 weeks to ease out of this, but we won't do this all in one day. And, that's a thought. Obviously, it's just a proposal, just a suggestion for you to consider. But that might be one thing, too, is kind of allowing sort of that witnessing for a while and just observing and then implementation. And then and one thing that helps with military personnel when they come home is to make it clear what their side of the street is. Here are the items that you are now responsible for, when they are due, and how you get them done. Rather than just leaving things and waiting for the other person to just notice them and pick them up. I hate it when couples do that. Like, I figured you would take care of this. Why? Because I didn't sweep the floor, so I thought maybe you would. You're just waiting for me to take out the trash? You see that it's full? Take it out. And it's like, listen, I get that that's a real feeling, and I'm not going to minimize that. It's also unproductive. Like, I want people to sit down and make it an understanding. What are my responsibilities? What are your responsibilities? When do we do these? Communication is the heart and soul of everything I think we're talking about.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. For all the couples that I've known that have gone through this, that seems to be the big determining factor of the ones that have the best success transitioning back is how well they can communicate.
Yeah.
And how well they can adjust their expectations.
Right.
And realizing, because I think everybody has this idea in their head of what this is going to look like when they come home, and everything's going to be wonderful.
Right.
And the sex is going to be amazing and
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Right.
And then it doesn't turn out that way.
Right.
And then it's really easy for people to get into that mindset of, oh my God, something's wrong.
Right.
Because this isn't going how it was supposed to go.
Yes.
This isn't what I pictured in my head.
Yeah.
But just being able to understand that it may not go how you have. It probably won't go how you have it in your head, but that's okay.
But the biggest thing that's been missing for this deployment is daily and regular communication. When you check in, you usually give people updates. You're going to switch to a new communication style. It's not update driven anymore. It's live.
Right.
And so I want that to be the first thing that changes, and have that be an intentional thing where you're both aware of it, committing to it, and now we're going to change our style. And I think that that's something that you kind of like adapt to, you sort of like get acclimated to. But that's going to be the biggest change. So I think that will ultimately grease the wheels and make this transition possible.
Yeah.
So, and also thank you for your service, Ulrich's significant other.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And thank you for putting up with Ulrich, because Ulrich harasses me nonstop on
wonderful.
Twitter. God, I'm so glad that your spouse is home. He'll leave me alone.
I was just thinking, like,
always with the business, always getting the business from Ulrich.
We are behind on our mail, so
yeah.
I hope he's not already home, because then, like, I wouldn't say our advice is.
Are you saying this will be the first time Ulrich's been let down by Pod Therapy? I don't think so. I think this is par for the course.
Good point.
Ulrich's like, oh, okay. Thanks for nothing, you idiots.
Good point.
But she still listens. And she supports.
Bless her.
Bless this woman. Thank you for your service, Ulrich's spouse. And thank you, Ulrich, for writing in. You're wonderful.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will talk about being hung up on an ex. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Dr. Ben Don, who submitted the following advertisement. This episode of Pod Therapy is brought to you by Nick's Popsicle Stick Baseball Stadiums.
God damn it.
For when you want to have a micro baseball stadium that is just as sticky as the real thing, you go to Nick's Popsicle Stick Baseball Stadiums. Every detail to an exact scale of the real thing. Any and all stadiums have and will be created to an exact replica of the real thing. Dugouts? Check. Vendors? Check. Trough urinals. Oh, you know it. Check. Nick's Popsicle Stick Baseball Stadiums have it all. And for the low, low price of your friends subscribing to your own podcast, you can have this awesome childhood memory brought up in front of at least 3 people in the studio. please reach out to our Twitter and have the baseball stadium of your choice be constructed out of nothing more than popsicle sticks, construction paper, and Nick's sweat and tears. Nick's popsicle stick baseball stadiums are here for you. That was worth the wait.
Well, now I'm going to have to explain this.
No, you don't. If you'd like to join the party and help make the show possible, tap into special content for patrons only, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're really going to leave it like that?
No, I want to know. So you made popsicle stick forts as a kid?
Okay, so... No, not forts. They were actually like...
Oh, the stadiums. Yeah.
I built a replica of Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, New York, with popsicle sticks.
That's because
I wanted to, when I was a kid, I wanted to. He probably didn't make it weird enough. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an architect.
Oh, okay.
And specifically, I wanted to build stadiums.
That's what every little boy is thinking. Bobby, what do you want to be?
There's not
a police officer. What do you want to be, Jake? A firefighter. What do you want to be, Nikki? A baseball stadium architect.
Yes,
and popsicle aficionado.
And honestly, I did pretty damn good.
According to Ben, you built the urinals.
That's an exaggeration. I didn't actually build urinals.
So you were half-assing it in the bathroom design.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Nick. That was totally worth waiting for. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for this gift.
Well, just wait, because yours is coming up.
Ben don't know me.
In 4 weeks.
He didn't grow up with me. You can't hurt me, Ben. My mom could.
All right. Well, we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next listener writes in about possibly being hung up on an ex.
Greetings, my favorite shrinks. I am recently divorced and still very much in love with my ex-wife. I know this is something I need to work on, but a new situation has come up which has me completely unsure of what feelings I should or shouldn't have. My ex-wife was the best part of me in every aspect while we were together. She integrated so well into my family, and my brothers and sisters treated her like another sibling. But now that we're divorced, I'm bothered that my siblings still have a great relationship with her. Since the divorce, my brother has been my ex-wife's +1 to a wedding party, and she texts and calls him still occasionally to check on me and catch up on the side of the fence of our family. Last night, my sister and her had coffee and dinner together as well. My sister did ask my permission first, which I appreciated, but even though I told her it was fine, I feel really angry and sad. I feel like everybody around me has a great relationship with her but me, and it has really made me sad and lonely. But she was a huge part of their lives, and I feel like I can't take that away or tell them to stop hanging out. So my question is, do I just accept these feelings until they disappear? Will they disappear? Or do I say something to my family and ask them to stop talking to her? I'm such at a loss for what I should feel or do. Thanks so much for the therapy. Scoopiter Ascending. Jeez, that's
Great
a tough one.
one.
Yeah, that's, I think my first thought, man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that loss. That's devastating.
Yeah, that really sucks. And it's difficult enough to go through the loss of a marriage and a relationship on its own.
Yeah.
But then when you throw in that other component too.
The component of still being in love with them?
Not only that, but because that's going to happen. I kind of expect that. But the component of her still having contact with the family and still associating with the family and still spending time with them.
Right.
Like, I get that. I would be upset too.
Yeah.
And I think the difficult thing is it becomes very difficult to channel that frustration because who are you mad at? And why? And are you justified for being mad?
Well, and it isn't just mad because Scoopiter's not just saying, I feel angry at this person. I'm still in love with her. And so this is super complicated because it's like we're not together, but we still are. Like, you're still part of my family.
Yep.
And this is good, and I want my family to like you.
And
but
you can still
God, I miss you.
Yeah, you can still be hung up and in love with somebody and at the same time be angry.
Right.
And be hurt and be frustrated.
Well, in this story, too, it's very similar to me of stories I've heard where spouses break up and they have children.
Yeah.
And so you still have to know this other person,
Yeah.
and you still have to be happy that your children are seeing them, and they're still touching your life, and you're hearing about them, and they're still in your orbit. And the people that you love them. And you may even still be in love with them. So I can see these multi-layers. The scenario that's being described to us is not something I don't think a lot of people could relate to. I think a lot of people maybe don't have the exact same version of the story, but can relate to this idea.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been in a similar situation, only my ex and my sister didn't really continue. They might still be Facebook friends. I don't know. I don't really know if they talk or not, but at the end of the day, I don't want to hear about it.
Right. It's
and
not.
that's ultimately what it boils down to. So, for Scoopiter Ascending, I think number one, I'm gonna point some things out to kind of help you.
Yeah.
The first thing I want to say is just an observation that I have, is one of my favorite sayings. You're shoulding all over yourself.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of shoulds.
Yep.
Okay. Whether I should or shouldn't have these feelings, or asking, sister, if it's okay that they hang out. I said yes, but then was upset that she actually did hang out, you know? And so in a way, that's kind of creating a should in your mind. Like you're saying, well, it doesn't matter what I say to my sister. She should know that this is going to bother me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you do then is you create an expectation that other people are not going to live up to because they don't know that that's an expectation. And you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment and frustration. It's perfectly fine that bothers you.
Yeah.
I get that. And you are completely entitled to your feelings. But you have to decide, do I communicate those feelings?
Yeah.
Or do I deal with this internally?
Yeah.
And I get that you don't want to set, and I respect the fact that you don't want to say to other people what they can and cannot do.
Right.
You can't talk to this person anymore.
Right.
Well, they're adults. They can continue that relationship if they want to.
Right.
But I think it's well within your right to be able to say, hey, sis, it does bother me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not over this. It still hurts me. It brings up a lot of feelings.
Right.
If you guys still hang out, that's cool, but I don't need to know about it.
Right. I don't necessarily have a directive for you as far as what I expect for you, but I will deliver my truth. I will be transparent and tell you, I'm not over her. My heart hurts, and it's hard for me to hear that other people I love get to have her, and I don't. And so I guess it's almost like saying, I've been recently diagnosed with diabetes. I can't have dessert. So have it, but not with me. Don't eat it around me. Don't tell me how good it was.
Right.
I don't want to subscribe to that part of your Instagram and see you enjoying all these freaking desserts.
Right.
We were married.
Yeah.
It starts to twist together. So I think that's really good. That's a good point.
Yeah. But your feelings are valid.
Yeah. And you got to
I get
validate
that.
those. And, I also want to talk a little bit about divorce care. So this goes out to everybody that can relate to this, but also to the writer. So whenever we get divorced, it is very much the cognitive model that we look at it as therapists. We see it like death. And that's kind of the way that we approach it. We think about it through this paradigm that we call the stages of grieving, right? Mm-hmm. The 7 stages of grief. And so whenever a significant change happens in our lives, whether it's the loss of a loved one through death or loss of a job or divorce or anything that's significant, there is this process humans have to go through in order to reach a place of acceptance and being okay again and being balanced and being, healthy. And so clearly to the writer, you're still very much in the midst of this process. I'm hearing some important words here, angry, right? And anger is one of the stages. Sadness, which is another one of the stages. And so these concepts are still very prevalent. And so I just want you to, know that it does get better. Know that this is not something that will endure forever. Know that you will be okay. And also appreciate and be authentic in your truth right now, that you're hurting, and that's okay. You have permission to do that. And it's okay to represent that to others. And that doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you weird. A lot of people will criticize you and say, why don't you just get over her, or why don't you just move on? And if your heart's not ready for that, it's okay to honestly represent that inside of yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's perfectly fine, like I said, to be able to explain to everybody that you need to heal. And part of that healing, I think, is that mental and emotional separation.
Yes.
Honestly,
it is. I'm fine with that. I really kind of want I'm not going to tell this person not to do it. Like, oh no, it's just let everything go, let bygones. But I kind of feel like, no, you kind of do. You need a separation. You need block them on Facebook. If you don't have children in common to where you have no choice but to interact with this person, limit or end most or all interactions. I kind of want that.
Yes, I definitely agree. And I think, and that's the difficult. I don't know how people with kids go through it.
It's hard.
It's incredibly difficult.
And I think that their divorces tend to be messier and the pain tends to be longer. And it gets weird.
The healing
It's very
is
rare
definitely
that
a
it
lot
turns
longer.
out okay. They have to approach it with a lot of intention to make it okay. And so to this writer, listen, we defer to your judgment. Okay, we're not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't do with your family members, only that you should probably be authentic and genuinely reflect what you believe and share your truth with your family members. That's fair. However, when we think about divorce care, it is similar to coming back to addictions work, people, places, and things, avoiding triggers.
Yep.
And I kind of want you to heal for a while and to sort of be void of all these experiences and reminders. I think that that's a good idea.
Yeah, I do too. And here's the other part of this too, which doesn't have anything to do with Scoopiter Ascending, but to do with her.
Yeah, the spouse.
Is that
or the ex-spouse.
the ex-spouse, that she's going to run into some issues too.
Yeah.
Because she isn't separating.
Yeah.
She's continuing to hang out with his family.
Yeah.
I don't really see that as being a good long-term outcome. I don't see anything. Because what's going to happen to her then? Is she really moving on with her life? And let's say she meets somebody else.
Yeah.
And she's going to, hey, let me introduce you to my friends. They're my ex's family.
And this is small of me and very bitter of me, and it's not the best version of me.
Oh, I can't wait.
There's a part of me that gets angry because I'm like, oh, you want to have your cake and eat it too.
Yes.
Yeah. So you didn't want me, but you wanted the package, right? You liked everything I represent. You like my people. You like my friendships. You like but we weren't working out. And of course that's not fair, right? Because we cannot work out, and yet you can still be wonderful and cordial and. And I get it, but there's a little part of me that's the reptilian brain is acting up. Like, okay.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
So if Jim and I can take off the therapist hat and just be human beings for a moment,
just bitter,
because and this is the part reading this that really upset me is exactly that.
Right.
And I get okay, so she has established relationships with these people.
Right.
She doesn't want those to end.
You lose those.
Well, guess what? Yeah, you lose it.
That's
what happens.
Yeah.
When you get a divorce, unfortunately, you split friends.
Yeah.
And you split family
and assets. And that you don't get to have. There are consequences.
Yeah.
And yet, putting not back on our hats, but soothing the reptilian brain for a second. It's also the fact that these are adults and you don't get to tell your family what they can and cannot do. That's not a boundary that's within your realm to draw.
Yes.
These are independent relationships that are absent of you. And that's fair. Just like friends, right? Like friends often choose one part of the couple or the other, and you don't have power over that. You don't have the right to call them and say, I knew you first.
Right.
Don't put them in that position. Don't drag them into this.
Good news, Jim. I got you in the draft.
Yeah. I think I've seen that. Yeah. In the divorce draft. Yeah. You're on my side, buddy. Thanks. I'm honored to be chosen. Looking forward to playing for your team. But, to Scoopiter, man, just, you're doing great. It's one day at a time. Give yourself permission to feel this. I think the best advice we really have is to represent authentically what your truth is. And let that be okay. And give yourself permission to tell others. You're not giving them a directive. You're just representing accurately what your current truth is. And then attend to yourself, man. Divorce recovery takes a while. It's a process. And give yourself permission to feel this. And it does get better. It will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It gets way better.
Yeah.
And in the end, you'll realize it was probably for the better.
It probably is.
It's going to take a while to get there, but I think you get there faster with more separation.
I agree.
Yep.
Good luck to you, sir.
Yep.
Well, we're at the end of our show, Nick, and we don't have any apologies. I've been keeping my mouth shut on the internet. Really proud of myself. But we do have some reviews. We have some great people who reviewed us on Facebook with 5 stars. And the first one comes from Stacy Westerlin Robertson, also known as 49th Scoop, the frozen 49th up there. I find the humor and destigmatizing mental health of this podcast is what we really need in this crazy world. Not only do Nick and Jim give great advice, they also promote mental health awareness in all forms. Love these guys.
Oh, thank you.
We love you back, Stacy. You're awesome. And then we also have another Facebook review from Justin Nosek, who wrote, I've been listening to Pod Therapy since the spring. The chemistry between doctors Nick and Jim is strong and beautiful. These guys want you to know that getting help for your mental health is one of the best things you can do for you. Love this show. That one inspired me because I thought, what would be great is if we had an ongoing joke where people left reviews that implied that we're gay. Like, that just subtly kept trying to, like, just leave it in there, but never say it. And, like, you know, the chemistry between these guys is really great. The passion is there. They're very virile.
The podcast sucked.
Podcast is terrible. But the way that they look into each other, like, it'd just be great if people, like, read this, like, wait, what is the show? Like, it'd be great if that was the ongoing joke, was, like, they kind of, like, twist terms. So but anyway, thank you, Justin. That was wonderful to read, and you're awesome.
All right, and patrons, we want to thank our patrons who support the show at www.patreon.com/therapy. At the beginning of the month, we say thank you to all of our Therapods, but today we want to thank and acknowledge our newest recruits to the three-toed reptilian special forces of our therapeutic alliance. Welcome to Jackie and Dustin, who upgraded their THERAPALs because they couldn't deny their aggressively dapper mental health advocacy.
Love you guys. And last but not least, we want to thank our bosses, the Elite Eight, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Theraproducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, who is the vice president of the board, I'll have you know, Kayla Lansbury, David Datascoop, Violon, Judy Schneider, Grae Whittaker, who is the chairman of the board, I'll have you know, and Dr. Ben Dawn, professional harasser of Nick.
Who's getting the most out of his money.
Oh, he is absolute best money he's ever spent. If you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited and enjoy things like our book club and discussion groups, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy, and thank you for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode in the description and copying and pasting it to others in the link provided. Don't forget that you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and now at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at www.podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tanchman.
I'm Popsicle Stick Jim.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Popsicle Sticks.